gentlemen, it's open seating. Please take your seats where it makes you comfortable. Thank you very much. Open seating. Herman. On the record. Ladies and gentlemen, open seating, please come in, take a seat, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats as His Highness will be coming in shortly. Thank you so much. Open seating, thank you. Gentlemen, please take your seats. Thank you very much. Open seating. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please do take your seats. His Highness will be coming in shortly. Thank you. Open seating for those not at the top table. Thank you very much. Please take your seats, ladies and gentlemen.
talk to him. He's here, he's here.
You hear me? You hear me?
Yeah, okay, His Highness. Your Highnesses, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you all to the Gulf Intelligence Energy Markets Forum, under the patronage of His Highness Sheikh Hamad bin Mohammed al-Sharqi, member of the Supreme Council and ruler of Fujairah. My name is Diala Sabbagh, I'm with Gulf Intelligence, and if we could just lessen the echo on my voice a little bit if possible, so we don't disturb anyone too much here. I'm delighted today to be your master of ceremonies and also to be moderating some of the discussions later on today and tomorrow at the forum. The Energy Markets Forum is in its 12th year, and as you'll see from the agendas on your tables, and also the full program can be found on the Gulf Intelligence main page, website. Over the next 2 days, we're going to be privileged by being joined by really the best of the best from industry and from the policy-making world to have some important discussions on the global energy markets community. And to tackle the theme question of the forum, which is navigating the changing winds and opportunities of the global south and energy choke points as we move towards, very quickly, 2025. Just to run you through today's agenda, we're going to start, of course, with the welcome lunch today, hosted by the Port of Fujairah. And I'd like to extend a special warm welcome to His Highness Sheikh Rashid bin Hamad al-Sharqi, Deputy Chairman of the Fujairah Oil Industry Zone, our host today at lunch. And then after lunch, we'll be proceeding to the mezzanine level for the geopolitics sessions, and also for those who've pre-registered for the workshop hosted by Enoch, which will be tackling the question of decarbonization in the midstream sector. And some of you have also registered for the Fujairah Terminals tour as well. And that will all be kicking off later at 2:30. And of course, tomorrow we have day 2 of the forum with plenty of discussions at the plenary and breakfast briefings and roundtables. But back to the lunch today and the business of the moment. I'm now delighted to welcome Mr. Simon Williams, Chief Economist for the MENA region at HSBC, who will be talking about his outlook, macroeconomic outlook for the MENA region. So welcome, Simon. Where is he now? Trying to find. There he is.
Goodness, he doesn't look very happy, does he? Thank you ever so much for giving me the chance to talk to you this afternoon. I'm Simon Williams. I'm the Chief Economist for HSBC Middle East. It's a genuine honor to have the chance to be here today. I got my hair cut specially for the trip to Fujairah. It doesn't happen that frequently. I've got 10 minutes and no slides, and I guess 2 sets of ideas, 2 themes that I'd like to get across to you, just to frame your thoughts for the rest of your gathering. The first is about the global outlook, the global backdrop. And I guess to suggest to you that if you are not a little uneasy, a little unsettled about what lies ahead, then perhaps you ought to be, because we are at a shift in the global cycle. The season is changing, and what lies ahead is in part a product of what came before. And the last 5 years have been extraordinary. We've had COVID, we've had the post-COVID era of super loose rates as we attempt to try to heat the global economies up. We had that period of really tight global rates as we tried to cool them back down again. And we are now in that shift in the phase where we look to policymakers and hope that they can land the global economy smoothly. And as a house, we think they probably will. We are not in the global recessionary camp, but we look around the world and we do recognize that there are signs of a slowdown in some parts of the US economy. Germany's in recession, the Eurozone is held back, the UK is in trouble, China is weighed down by a whole set of cyclical and structural challenges that growth outlook is testing. We look around and we try to work out what tools policymakers have at their disposal to try to shift that global story, and we are comforted by how far global inflation has fallen. Goods inflation in particular has come down a long way. Services inflation, that's come off as well, and that's good because it means policymakers can start to loosen what have been really tight and restrictive global monetary conditions, but monetary policy works with a lag. There are limits to what it can actually do, and I would suggest to you limits to the kind of cyclical support that monetary easing can offer. It's particularly difficult for policy to offer support in a global political backdrop that is still testing, where there are election uncertainties ahead, where global trade is perhaps challenged in ways it hasn't been for quite some time. So look at that global story, recognize that the story is moving on, the cycle is developing, the season is changing, but also recognize that there are some real difficulties and uncertainties running through that global stage. My second set of thoughts to you is about the region, about the Middle East in general, the Gulf in particular, and I would say to you that I am still constructive, more than constructive. I am still bullish on what I see happening in this part of the world. I still expect the Gulf to be a global outperformer over the years ahead. I see it in the growth numbers, not all growth, now running at roughly double the global pace of global expansion. This is good. Sentiment levels are very high. The high-frequency data that I can watch still has momentum at a time when it's fading elsewhere. Some of the unique properties of this part of the world feed into that global story. Consumption growth is going to be strong because population growth is strong. One of the most difficult things for me about moving back to the Middle East from London is that in London I'm only middle-aged. Here I am an old man because those populations are so young, but with that youthfulness comes increases in the number of workers, increases in consumers, and a generational shift in how policy fares. And I like that very much. The export-orientated service sector is performing very well. The strongest recoveries from COVID and travel and tourism anywhere in the world are here in the GCC region. And given the capacity expansion has been, I think that continues to drive growth forward. The big capital spending cycle that we have, again, nowhere else in the world could even contemplate a capital spending program, investment program of the magnitude there is here in the GCC, because they don't have the confidence and, frankly, they don't have the cash. And I think that investment cycle, it continues to be a powerful driver over the coming couple of years. And on top of that, the big structural reform which has taken place, a real shift in the economic landscape that there is here, changes around governance, changes around the way in which policy is made, the digitization of government, of the economy, changes in how financial markets work, changes in how labor markets work, a real openness to trade and to capital and to people. I think that structural shift continues to give the cycle support, particularly in an environment where inflation is low, government debt is low, and those currency pegs shield the region against FX volatility. But if I still like how that regional story plays, what I would caution you is that we are perhaps moving into a more difficult phase of that cycle. The last 3 years, the post-COVID years, have been extraordinarily robust, but as cycles mature, they start to slow. It becomes harder to maintain momentum. Weakness in the outside world feeds through into this part of the world as well. The geopolitics, we've withstood the geopolitical shocks, but I think we would all recognize we are in a geopolitical environment that we didn't anticipate a year ago. It's not quite clear where we'll be a year from now, and uncertainty inevitably brings a degree of hesitancy. The oil price still matters for this part of the world. There will come a time when we can say that the economies have diversified sufficiently that oil prices are not of concern. That day may come, but that day is not today, and the oil price will continue to determine the rhythm of activity that runs through the region's affairs. We have an oil price traded between 70 and 90 running through our forecasts, and that's just fine for the Gulf over the cycle. But if oil prices were to trend below that level because of external or production side decisions, then that feeds through into the capacity to continue spending programs. It feeds through into sentiment. It feeds through into liquidity, and ultimately it feeds through into growth. I guess the last observation I would offer you is that for all that I see in those structural changes that genuinely cheer me, all that I see in that refashioning of the landscape, which has lifted potential growth rates across the GCC region, we are still in the early stages of that reform process. The productivity gains that I see are still relatively limited, and if the extraordinary outperformance of the last 3 or 4 years is to continue, then it's just critical that those structural changes continue to be delivered. That is almost exactly my 10 minutes done. Thank you ever so much for giving me the chance to speak to you. As I say, 2 themes that I'd like to labor. That global cycle is moving, that global cycle is shifting. It's a change in the season, and what happens next will in part be a product of what came before, and what came before has been extraordinary. For the Gulf, I am still upbeat on how I see that growth story faring. I like the cyclical story. I like the structural story. There are some unique strengths that are apparent in the outlook for this part of the world. But the period since COVID has been extraordinary, and I think from here it may get a little tougher. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much to Simon Williams there for setting the scene for 2025 macroeconomic outlook. Well, I'm delighted now to welcome the guest of honor at today's lunch, Mr. Torbjörn Törnqvist, founder and chairman of Gunvor Group, of course, as all of you would know, is one of the leading global oil trading firms in the world. Mr. Törnqvist has had a stellar 40-year career in the oil and gas business. I will not list those accolades, but he started his career with BP and moved on to head Scandinavian Trading Company AB and other stints before he founded Gunvor. So I'm delighted now to welcome him again, invite him to the stage to have a seat, and joining him will be Ms. Jumana Bersece, anchor at Bloomberg Television, who will be conducting a fireside chat with Mr. Törnqvist. Thank you very much, Jumana and Mr. Törnqvist. Thank you.
On? Yeah, it's on now. I was going to say it's quite difficult to follow in Simon's footsteps, and I do this for a living. So that was a wonderful overview. Thank you, Simon. My name is Jumana Bersece. I am an anchor at Bloomberg TV. I've been here for 5 months now, and hopefully you watch the show in the morning. It's on 8 a.m. Dubai time every single day of the week. We're moving to a 2-hour show in a couple of weeks. And of course, we cover all of the big stories in the region, from business, economics, trade, and of course, energy. I spend a lot of my time speaking to energy experts, trying to understand this market a little bit better. And of course, over the last few months, we've been tracking what has been driving the price of oil very closely. And some of the big themes that come up pertain to OPEC plus decision making. We talk about the rise of non-OPEC supply. We talk about some of the demand signals that are coming through, some of the weakness that has transpired out of China recently, and then, of course, all of the geopolitical premium that is getting factored into this market as well. So, with that in mind, we're very lucky to be hearing from Mr. Törnqvist. And before you and I have a chat, I believe you're going to give us an outlook for where you see the oil markets headed in 2025. So, without further ado, please welcome Mr. Törnqvist.
So, well, first of all, thank you, Your Excellencies, Your Highness, Your Excellencies, for hosting us all today. I thought I was trying to make a little bit of an overview, a bit of the longer perspective, and I think we'll talk a little bit about short-term aspects of the oil market, right? So just to reflect what we heard here, I think if we go back, let's say 4 years, we've gone through quite some dramatic events in the world. We had the COVID, we have a full-blown energy crisis that the oil historian Daniel Yergin says it is the biggest energy crisis the world has affected. That was just 3 years ago. European conflict, in the middle of that we have an energy transition to deal with, and also, as lately, also regional conflict. A lot of things too obviously has happened. And what's striking about all these things, all of these events was practically unforeseen. There was nobody on predicting that this would happen. And they were also very disruptive. Today, we're actually looking at a somewhat different environment. Yes, conflicts are still there, but it seems when it comes to energy and oil, it doesn't have that much of an impact. And I think that is for good reasons. As our industry, I'm talking about the oil and gas industry, has been good at through the centuries, it stands up to the challenges. An enormous amount of capital and investment went into the oil and gas sector. We have found more oil. We find oil cheaper today than we ever have done before. And today, the reality is that the world has built a somewhat more comfortable reserve capacity in production. And if you look at the whole chain, it's not only the oil prices that has found probably a new equilibrium, I think it is. Volatility has come down because of these safety cushions that the system now have. Refining margins are also down. Ship rates are down. In short, a normalization of things. And this is obviously also remarkable given what is happening around us with the geopolitical uncertainty. So the question is, what lies ahead, and particularly what lies ahead for the oil and gas industry? Well, first of all, we have the energy transition to deal with. And this is an enormous complex process. And as the years goes by, we found ourselves it's more and more complex. It will take different paths. It have different pace, depending where you are. And the energy transition has a different meaning altogether. Somebody who doesn't have energy at all has his transition or her transition. It's very different from somebody who sits comfortable in one of the metropolis in Europe. Very different. So, what are the solutions? What are the solutions here? You're following the debate. You hear ways forward. You hear hydrogen. You hear solar. You hear wind. Yes. These are the ones, but these will not change the fact. The world 30 years ago was 84% dependent on fossil fuels. Today, it's 84%. And I bet you, by the end of this century, it's not going to be much different. Yes, we have progress in finding other way, but it's simply not enough. There is no clear path to net zero. Gunvor, my company, we have invested millions of dollars in technologies, the proven one, the solar and wind, which we should do as much as we can. But also, shall we say, more visionary things like green hydrogen. Green hydrogen is not the solution. It's just too expensive. It adds 4 to 5 times to the price of an already green energy source. And it's difficult to transport, and it's difficult to build the infrastructure around. But still, policymakers have made up their mind about fossil fuels. I'm a member of the World Economic Forum's Gas and Governors Group, and we have these discussions behind closed doors among ourselves and discuss also with policymakers. And there is a frustration that nobody wants to listen, and we become a punch bag in the debate about what the future will be. We're blamed for bringing the energy the world so desperately needs to the market. But we all know in this room, without the oil and gas, we have today, the world will not be in such a good place. It is the base for the prosperity that this globe has done. And there will be, obviously, a trade-off between this, the right for everybody to have energy in affordable form, and right to have an economic development, against the fact that we have to reduce the CO2 emissions. It's clear. It's not denial about the fact that fossil fuel has a role to play that, and the majority of us think so. So what shall we do? First of all, the oil and gas industry has to be invited to the table. We are sitting with the facts. Every one of us are spending money to find good solutions. We can compare the costs. We know what is possible. Sometimes when you meet policymakers, they seem to have the answer to what we should do before they even ask the question. And when you ask them and you talk about, what do you know about e-fuel? They don't know, actually. They just hear it's good. It's slogans. But it's convenient. But I do think that the people have the right to know the facts and make the painful decisions if they want so, meaning use less energy at a high cost. But I'm an optimist. I think this can be done both ways. And I think the oil and gas industry will move forward and be taking a much more assertive approach to what can be done. Give you a simple example. A huge amount of electricity provided in the world comes from burning coal. If you could change that coal for gas, you halve the emissions, right? That's a pretty good start. This is actually better than any other solutions we have today on a large-scale basis. And it's also better for the near-term atmosphere. You know that. So the industry is in full-fledged to try to develop its own emissions reductions technologies. I mean, in the US, we should see the result of that. We're talking about direct air capture of CO2. And we can avoid flaring. We can bury it underground. There are technical solutions because gas can be brought to the surface in an extremely cheap way. And you can spend quite a lot of money on cleaning it and still have an affordable energy. The problem is, if you talk about that, the answer from it is, yeah, you just want to preserve your own business. Of course, no CEO wants to be fired for saying the wrong things. And yeah, it's actually like that. And so you don't say that. But it is time to speak out. I don't have any shareholder who can fire me, so I can say these things. So, obviously, as you see what I conclude to, there's no way that the oil and gas market, oil and gas, will have the substantial role in the future energy mix. There's no way around that. And as soon as we realize that that's the way, I think we can get to practical solutions. I think it's amazing that oil industry has to fight to get into lately in COP28 or now in COP29. Yes, you can visit there. Are you allowed to speak? Not really. So this is quite amazing. But the math doesn't add up, and sooner or later everyone will understand that. So, we heard here, and I'll come here, this region is really the future. It's progressive, it does the right thing, and I think it's also, in spite, it sounds fun to say so, but I think it's also given the regional conflicts that we have here and next door, but I think it is also a bastion of stability, predictability. It is on the crossroad of the north, south, east, west. and it has a policy of going around its own business. And I agree with Simon here. The capital is flowing into this region for good reasons. It certainly has the future. And Gunvor, our company, who are dealing with the logistics of oil and making sure that we move it from one place to another as efficient as possible, see huge possibilities here. And we are making investment in this region. So am I going away from my hat as an oil trading company, but also saying as a private person, I think it's very attractive here. So I think that's it for that one. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Really fascinating to hear you articulate some of your more long-term views about where oil and gas is headed as well. Just bringing back to two things. Simon, in his introductory comments, talked about the winds of change are coming and that there are signs of a slowdown in the global economy. And you, at the beginning of your remarks, talk about this so-called new equilibrium. So let's just put those two pieces of information together and associate them with what's been happening to the price of energy, to oil, the last couple of months. There has been a lot of downward pressure. Oil is down 14, 15% the last 3 months. How do you see the balance of risks more near term in the next, say, 6 months?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's true. We also see it. For instance, if you look at, the macroeconomics, I think he quite elegantly described it and caught on to that. It's clearly a slowdown. So what does it mean for oil demand? I mean, we still have an energy transition. And we take China, for instance. China's demand, which we have suspected, we've seen it, but we've been a bit puzzled about the optimistic views we've heard for too long time, because we actually didn't see that. There are a case to say today that the demand for the main products like gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel oil probably have plateaued in China forever. Yeah? When you hear about oil demand coming, and they include things like LPG gases and natural gasolines. This is that, but they do not come from the refining and from the oil. They come from byproducts of gas extraction. And gas is also eating into traditional oil demand. So there is a case that we will see. Our prediction for next year is that we will see very, very modest demand. Now, we all know that the production for the next year and two, and even beyond that, outside the control of OPEC, is going to increase by 1.5 million barrels a day.
Yeah.
And we think that demand will fall well short of that. Clearly, that poses a dilemma for OPEC going forward. And we have heard it. And it comes to a point, do we want to concede market share or not? I'm not going to talk about what they should do. I'm just talking about the dilemma they have to do square. Defending price, which is clearly too high, versus a market share.
Yeah. You've answered 3 of my questions in one, but I'm going to go back just to what you said about China and that you think the demand from there has plateaued. Last week, we saw quite a substantial stimulus announced from China, monetary policy, fiscal measures to help boost the property market. Do you think that's going to move the needle at all on China's oil consumption?
I think that generally what we call the golden decade for China, right? A huge, massive build-out of heavy industries, construction and so forth. I don't see the same type of growth. It's not as energy intense. And by the way, I mean, they are having, their growth is also by taking a lead technologically through EVs. And they also now converting trucks not to run on diesel, but on natural gasolines. Yes, energy demand will go, but the oil part of it will not grow.
So the other big driver and the big question for markets is what is going to happen once OPEC Plus start putting back those barrels to market? And you articulated the debate that is going on, I guess, within the group quite well right now. There's this element of wanting to keep price stability, but at the same time pressure to increase market share, increase production coming from certain members within the group. What do you think they end up doing? And can the market actually accommodate extra barrels coming to the market from the end of this year?
I think that if you see when you have, if you don't have demand growth, it's going to be hard to push the price artificially high. Let's take one. What is a high and a low oil price? How do you define that? It's actually the marginal cost of production. We can agree on that. Now, I'll give you a short story here. 12 years ago, I heard a Total CEO complaining he couldn't make his exploration profitable at $100 an oil. I spoke to the CEO 2 weeks ago. He was so proud. He made deep sea projects in Angola and Suriname with break-even costs between 20 and 40. And productivity gains are still coming. We are better to find oil, we're better to bring it to the surface, and we do it cheaper. So, why can you then, and at $80, I would love to invest. So does the community, because you're making a huge amount of money. It's just too good. And oil has been like that. As a response, as I said, to the energy crisis, perceived one, exploration came in high prices. And I think we need to put the brakes on. Spare capacity is growing, and that is never a good sign. So I think, so what is the fair oil? I think, honestly, you're all going to overshoot and undershoot. It's not one price and you keep it there. The price gives the signal, invest more or invest less. Now the price has to give a signal that we need to invest a bit less. So I think that...
Are we at that price now, so around $70?
What?
Do you think we're at that price now?
I think over a period of time, I think 70 or so. I mean, it's not an exact number. It's not 80. That I'm pretty convinced of. It's lower than that. Is it 60? Probably not. Not over a period of time. Will it go to 60? I've been in this market long enough to not exclude anything. I'm not going to do that. So we have that. But I think back in your mind is, where do we add more hydrocarbons than the market can absorb? The prices has to come down.
Yeah. Do you worry about OPEC Plus cohesion as a group?
What, sorry?
Do you worry about the cohesion of OPEC Plus as a group as we get closer and closer to decision-making time?
Well, we'll see. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to discuss what OPEC is going to do or not do. I think I can see this dilemma, and they're going to have to make a choice. If the forecast I mean, we can see the economy may be very surprising, and you know, about the optimism coming and so forth. We don't know, but the outlook we see today is with hardly any growth in oil, and we know there's a substantial growth in supply, so something has to give. Will OPEC once again step in and say we take off from the market or not? This is what they have now to decide among themselves.
On non-OPEC supply, we have a presidential election coming up in the US, and former President Trump has talked a lot about drill, baby drill, but obviously we know oil production out of the US has done nothing but increase under President Biden. Do you expect there to be a change of policy towards oil, and also to what you were articulating in your opening remarks about the energy transition? Should there be a change in government?
Clearly, the Democratic is much more progressive when it comes to the transition and want to move faster in this direction. But they're also pragmatic about this whole thing. I do believe that you will see the LNG export capacity continue to build out as foreseen. Just a small break here. I think both sides will agree to that. And the oil industry will continue to grow. I think productivity gains, they're higher than people generally think. So even though you don't see more oil rigs, I think you're still going to see that growing. And I think everyone, by the end of the day, agrees that it's probably good for the United States.
Geopolitics comes up a lot in this region. The past couple of weeks, no shortage of headlines. We're keeping a close eye on that. But oil has so far brushed off concerns because there hasn't been a physical impact yet to supply or production out of Iran. As a physical trading house, how are you navigating some of these geopolitical risks? And also, given it's been more than a year now that we've seen disruption in the Red Sea.
I mean, we are an oil trading company, so we actually, as a trading company, we are specialized in moving oil from A to B, and clearly it's price is lower here, higher here, and if you can breach that with very efficient transportation, you make money. And we also agile, small, and we move very quickly. So of course, in times of turbulence and drastically changing arbitrage and prices and so forth, there's no secret, you know it yourself, that oil trading companies done extremely well. When things are very calm and normalized, obviously our services has, by smoothing things out, has done this work. So obviously margins gets a little bit more normalized accordingly. It's clear, I mean, there's no secret about that. So yes, I think this is how we are, that we manage these things. We make our decisions, we make our calls, will this lead to a wider conflict or not, clearly. And we have the fleet and the resources just to move oil to where it's needed in any given time.
Do you think there's some complacency in the market about the potential flaring up of further risk, geopolitical risks in the region?
Well, it's a good question. The market, before I went in here, is just above $70, right? So clearly the market, the question is there really a risk premium in that price? So you would wonder what the price would be without that. I think that I'm very confident that this will not have any impact at all on oil supply, provide a conflict or any blockage of any serious thing. Yes, we have a situation around in the Red Sea, Yemen, but by and large it's more like a nuisance, not really disruptive in any way. So I'm very confident in that, and it seems that the market more focused on the concern of lack of growth in oil demand for the moment.
Okay. So it sounds to me that you have what I would say, I'm paraphrasing, maybe a subdued outlook in the short term. How do you position for that? How do you create opportunities?
Sorry, I didn't hear the beginning.
A subdued outlook for oil in the near term.
A substitute?
A subdued, just a moderate outlook for the price of oil. How do you position for what potentially could be quite a bearish market in the coming months? How do you create opportunities for yourself?
On the oil side, yeah? Trading, you mean?
On the trading side, yeah.
Well,
let's talk trading.
Let's put it like this. We're probably not storing that much oil, quite frankly. As I said, it's clearly some downward pressure because of the uncertainty. But you just don't know how OPEC will react to potential, I'm talking now potential oversupply. We see the market is not very oversupplied short term. That's remarkable. Stocks are relatively low, but it's more focused on what's happening tomorrow. I think there's enough oil now to go through, but tomorrow it doesn't necessarily look so good without a clear signal that there will be restraints on the output.
Do you feel that there's a lot more competition from some of the Middle East-owned oil trading firms now? And if that is the case, how do you compete relative to the reach that some of these firms have?
It's clear that the major producers in the Middle East are now all of them practically setting up their own trading operations, which makes a lot of sense. We must say that, and we respect that. And obviously to optimize where they sell their oil and try to get more out of the value chain, and they should do that. We work together with them. We have our own areas, what we will do. So we work alongside. We think that first of all, the market sometimes feels very crowded, but I think we always have competition one way or another. And we just have to be sharper and find our own way and not we never confront anybody head on. It's never like that. We do cooperate, and there is a word of cooperation. A lot around shipping and transportation. I mean, if you just break out our internal shipping company, Clear Lake Shipping, it's a top 10 ship manager in the world. So and obviously these resources is very valuable for trading houses.
Within the GCC, we're seeing a lot of progress in terms of refining capabilities. How does that also open up opportunities to you as well?
Did you were refining?
Refining.
Yeah.
Refining opportunities.
Yeah.
What do you see
Well,
emanating from
we
the
see
GCC?
obviously that the refining margins is now coming under pressure. We have seen a quite substantial build out of new efficient refining capacity in the Middle East and Asia. I think this region alone is something like 800,000-900,000 barrels a day, which is not small. And obviously it will lead to some closure of less efficient refineries, which probably is ahead. And so as a refining margin is going to be under pressure, we believe, if demand is not growing. It's clear. So, but will it go to very, very bad numbers? I don't think so.
Well, I'm conscious of time. I just want to round up the discussion asking you about lower interest rates, because we are moving to a lower interest rate environment. How does that provide a tailwind to how you're thinking about trading and positioning over the next 6 months?
What do you sorry, I got
For trading, how does it provide you with an impetus for trading lower interest rates? How do you see it helping your
alternative
business?
energies you're talking? Are you talking alternative energies? No?
Lower interest rates and your trading business.
Lower
Interest rates. I think
Lower
there's a bit of
energy
echo with the...
it's the echo. Yeah, sorry. No, I mean, if you talk about, we trade obviously under any circumstances, whether the prices are high, whether they're low, what kind of quality, and this and that. Obviously, as a trading company, we look also to the alternatives. I mean, things like power and gas. By the way, we didn't speak about gas. I'm very bullish on gas. I think LNG could easily double in size over the next 20 years for the reason I mentioned. And we're also moving in to metals, which may be relevant for the energy transition as well. So when it comes to trading, the nice thing with a company like us, we're free to do a little bit what we want. There's certainly an amount of opportunistic thinking, but also long-term strategy.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, such a terrible echo.
Thank you very much to Jumana from Bloomberg and Mr. Tornquist. Thank you so much. And if you'd like to take your seats, we're about to serve the main course for lunch. But before I allow you to get started on that, just a reminder that in about half an hour, and I will stand up here and remind you again, we will be going upstairs to the mezzanine level for the geopolitics sessions, which should be very, very dynamic conversations given where we're at today. We've got one on China, on Iran. We even have an OPEC session, actually, and how geopolitics might be playing into that. We have a session on Turkey and the US elections. So great sessions there. And of course, the workshop on Enoch. Many of you have pre-registered for those sessions, but if you haven't, no problem. Once you get to the mezzanine level, we'll tell you where there's space and you can make a choice then. And we have the Fujairah Terminals tour as well. And this evening, we have the Aramco Trading New Silk Road CEO Awards starting here after 7 p.m. So look forward to seeing you all then. So without further ado, bon appétit. I believe there's a buffet open for the majority here. And of course, lunch will be served to the top table. And we look forward to seeing you in about half an hour. Thank you so much. Thanks.